Sarah Chen had been walking for 6 hours straight. Her legs ached, and her water supply was running low. She stopped and looked up at the strange purple sky of Viridian 7. This planet was nothing like Earth, but it was beautiful in its own way. The crystalline trees around her sparkled in the double sunset. 2 suns hung low on the horizon, casting orange and pink light across everything. Sarah was a xenobiologist, which meant she studied alien life forms. This mission was supposed to be simple: land on the planet, collect samples, map the terrain, and return to the ship. Easy. But nothing in space was ever easy. The first sign of trouble came as a buzzing sound in her earpiece, then static, then nothing. Sarah tapped the communicator on her wrist. Dead. She tried her tablet. The screen flickered and went black. All her equipment was shutting down. Above her, the sky began to change. Dark clouds rolled in fast, too fast to be natural. Lightning crackled between them, but it was green, not white. The electromagnetic storm her team had detected earlier was arriving much sooner than predicted. Sarah needed shelter immediately. These storms could fry her suit's life support systems if she stayed exposed. She scanned the area and spotted a rocky hillside with dark openings. Caves. Perfect. She ran toward them as the first wave of energy hit. Her suit's shields buzzed and sparked. The hair on the back of her neck stood up. She dove into the nearest cave entrance just as another pulse washed over the landscape. Inside the cave was surprisingly warm. Sarah moved deeper, away from the entrance where the storm's energy could reach. Her suit lights activated automatically, showing smooth walls that looked almost polished. The cave went back much farther than she expected. After about 50 meters, the passage opened into a larger chamber. The walls here glowed faintly with some kind of bioluminescent moss. It gave off a soft blue light that was actually quite pretty. Sarah checked her suit readings. The air was breathable, though she kept her helmet on. The temperature was comfortable, almost cozy. She sat down against the back wall with a heavy sigh. The wall was warm against her back, which was strange but welcome. Sarah closed her eyes for just a moment. She would rest for a few minutes, then figure out how to repair her communicator. Her team knew approximately where she was. They would come looking for her once the storm passed. Her body had other ideas. The adrenaline from running was wearing off, and Sarah realized she was exhausted. She had been up for nearly 20 hours. The warm wall, the soft light, the quiet of the cave. It was all so peaceful. Sarah's eyes started to close. That was when she heard it. A soft chirping sound, like birds, but not quite. Her eyes snapped open. She was not alone. From a side tunnel she had not noticed before, small shapes emerged into the blue light. Sarah froze. 6 small creatures, each about the size of a house cat, waddled into the chamber. They were covered in fur that looked silver in the moss light. They had 4 legs and long tails that swished behind them. Their heads were round with large eyes that reflected the light. The creatures chirped at each other, then noticed Sarah. They all froze too. Sarah held her breath. First contact protocols ran through her mind. Do not make sudden movements. Do not appear threatening. Let them approach at their own pace. Never assume behavior. The smallest one chirped and took a step forward. Then another. It tilted its head, studying Sarah with obvious curiosity. Sarah stayed completely still. The small creature came closer. It sniffed the air. Then it warbled, a sound that seemed almost happy. Before Sarah could react, it trotted right up to her and climbed onto her lap. Sarah gasped. The creature was warm and soft. It circled once on her lap, just like a cat, then settled down. Its purring sound started immediately, a gentle rumbling that Sarah could feel through her suit. The other 5 watched this. They chirped among themselves, seeming to have a conversation. Then, one by one, they followed. Within a minute, all 6 small creatures had piled onto Sarah's lap and legs. They snuggled against each other and against her, treating her exactly like she was a cushion put there for their comfort. Sarah did not know what to do. Her training said to maintain distance from alien life, but she was too tired to move them, and honestly, they were adorable. Their combined warmth seeped through her suit. Their purring created a soothing sound that filled the cave. One of them looked up at her with huge, trusting eyes. It yawned, showing tiny teeth, then tucked its head under its tail. Sarah felt something shift in her chest. These creatures had no fear of her. They trusted her completely and immediately. In all her years of studying alien life, she had never experienced anything like this. She should scan them, document them, take samples. But her equipment was dead, and she was so very tired. The creature's purring was like a lullaby. The warm wall supported her back. The soft weight on her lap was comforting in a way she had not expected. Just a few minutes of rest, Sarah told herself. Just until the storm passes. Her eyes closed. The cubs purred on. The cave glowed softly around them, and Sarah Chen, human xenobiologist, fell into the deepest sleep she had experienced in months, buried under a pile of alien cubs who had decided she was theirs. She did not hear the much larger creature that approached from the deeper tunnels. She did not see the enormous shadow that fell across the cave entrance. She did not know that the mother had returned. Sarah woke slowly, confused about why her bed felt so strange. Then she remembered. She was not in bed. She was in a cave on an alien planet with 6 small creatures sleeping on her, except something was different now. Something big. Sarah opened her eyes, and her heart stopped. Standing in the center of the cave, not 3 meters away, was the largest predator she had ever seen up close. The creature stood on 8 powerful legs, each ending in curved claws that looked sharp enough to cut through her suit like paper. Its body was covered in armor-like plates that overlapped in dark purple and black. Its head was long and angular, with 4 eyes arranged in a square pattern. Those eyes were all looking directly at Sarah. This was a razorback. Sarah recognized it from the orbital scans her team had done. Apex predator, highly territorial, extremely dangerous. The scans had warned everyone to avoid them at all costs. And Sarah was sitting in its cave with its babies sleeping on her lap. She could not move. The cubs were piled on her legs, pinning her in place. Not that moving would help. The razorback could cross the distance between them in a heartbeat. Sarah was dead. She knew it. This was how she would die, far from Earth, in a cave on a planet humans had only discovered 3 weeks ago. The razorback took a step forward. Its claws clicked on the stone floor. Sarah's breathing quickened. The creature's mouth opened slightly, showing rows of teeth designed for tearing meat. Sarah pressed herself back against the wall, but there was nowhere to go. One of the cubs woke up. It yawned and stretched, then noticed its mother. The cub made a happy chirping sound and bounced excitedly, but did not leave Sarah's lap. Instead, it called out to the big razorback, its little tail wagging. The other cubs woke up too. They all started chirping and warbling at their mother. But none of them moved away from Sarah. They stayed right where they were, snuggled against the human who had become their bed. The mother razorback tilted her head. She looked at Sarah, then at her cubs, then back at Sarah. She took another step forward, slower this time. Sarah could barely breathe. The creature lowered her enormous head and sniffed. She was so close now that Sarah could feel the warm breath through her suit's exterior. The razorback sniffed Sarah's helmet, her shoulders, her arms. A low, rumbling sound came from deep in the creature's chest. Sarah wanted to close her eyes, but she could not look away. The 4 eyes studying her showed intelligence. This was not a mindless beast. The razorback was thinking, evaluating, deciding. One of the cubs climbed up Sarah's chest and chirped directly at its mother, as if explaining something important. The cub seemed to be vouching for Sarah, telling its mother that this strange creature was safe and warm and made a very good bed. The mother razorback's rumbling changed pitch. It became deeper, more rhythmic. After a moment, Sarah realized it was the same purring sound the cubs made, just much louder. Then the enormous predator did something Sarah would never have predicted. She walked around to the side and carefully, slowly, lay down. Her massive body stretched out along the cave floor right next to where Sarah sat. One of her 8 legs extended to rest near Sarah's feet, not aggressively, just there. The cubs squealed with delight. They bounded between their mother and Sarah, climbing on both of them. The mother lowered her head onto her front legs and watched Sarah with those intelligent eyes. The purring continued. Sarah sat completely still for a long time. Her mind raced. This did not make sense. Everything they knew about razorbacks said they were dangerous, territorial, aggressive. But this one had just chosen to lie down next to a human. Not only that, she seemed to be accepting Sarah as part of the family group. Why? Sarah looked down at the cubs. They were happy and energetic now, playing with each other and climbing on both Sarah and their mother. Then Sarah noticed something. The cubs were thin. Not starving, but definitely not getting enough food. Their ribs showed through their fur. Sarah looked at the mother more carefully. There, on her side, partially hidden by her armor plates, was a wound. It was infected, the edges red and swollen. The wound was deep and looked painful. Understanding hit Sarah like a wave. The mother was injured. She could not hunt properly. The cubs were not getting enough food. When they found Sarah warm and safe and sitting still, they had piled on for comfort. And when their mother returned, instead of finding a threat, she found something that made her cubs happy. Something that was not hurting them. So she made a choice that showed remarkable intelligence and flexibility. She decided to trust. Sarah stayed frozen for another 10 minutes. Then, very slowly, she moved one hand. The mother's eyes tracked the movement, but she did not react aggressively. Sarah reached for the small medical kit on her belt. It was designed for humans. But the basics of wound care were universal. She pulled out an antiseptic wipe. The mother razorback watched but stayed still. The cubs kept playing, unconcerned. Sarah spoke softly, even though the creature could not understand her words. "I want to help. Is that okay? Will you let me help?" The mother's purring continued. She did not move away. Taking the biggest risk of her life, Sarah slowly shifted to her knees. The cubs tumbled off her lap with annoyed chirps. Sarah moved toward the mother's wounded side. The creature's eyes followed her, but still, she did not attack. Sarah reached out with the antiseptic wipe. She paused, giving the razorback a chance to refuse. The creature watched, waited. Sarah gently touched the wound with the wipe. The mother flinched but did not pull away. Sarah cleaned the wound as carefully as she could. The creature's muscles tensed under those armored plates, but she held still. The purring stopped, replaced by a low whine, but she let Sarah continue. Sarah used 3 wipes to clean the infection as best she could. Then she applied antibiotic gel from her kit. Finally, she placed a large bandage over the wound. It would not stick well to the alien hide, but it was better than nothing. When Sarah finished, she sat back. The mother razorback turned her head to look at her side, examining what Sarah had done. Then she looked at Sarah again. The purring started once more. One of the cubs climbed back onto Sarah's lap and settled down immediately. The others followed, and Sarah sat there, surrounded by alien creatures that had accepted her completely, wondering how she was going to explain this to her rescue team. 3 days passed in the cave. Sarah could not believe it had been 3 days, but her suit's internal clock did not lie. 3 days of living with a family of razorbacks, 3 days that changed everything she thought she knew about alien intelligence. On that first morning after treating the mother's wound, Sarah had been very hungry. Her emergency rations would last a while, but she needed to conserve them. More importantly, she realized the cubs needed food. Real food. More than their mother could provide in her injured state. Sarah made a decision that would have made her mission commander very angry. She decided to help. She stood up carefully. The mother razorback raised her head, watching. Sarah pointed to herself, then to the cave entrance, then mimed eating. The creature did not understand human gestures, obviously, but she seemed to sense Sarah's intent. When Sarah walked toward the entrance, the mother did not stop her. She did growl softly, and 2 of her cubs chirped unhappily, but she let Sarah go. Outside, the storm had passed. The purple sky was clear again. Sarah's suit systems were slowly coming back online, though her communicator was still dead. She would need parts to fix it properly. Sarah spent 2 hours gathering food. She collected the blue fruits she had cataloged earlier in the week. They grew on low bushes and tasted like sour apples. She found a rotting log full of fat grubs that looked remarkably like earth beetle larvae. They were high in protein and, according to her earlier scans, completely safe to eat. She even managed to catch 3 small lizard-like creatures that moved too slowly to escape. When she returned to the cave, her arms full, the mother razorback stood up. She sniffed the air, smelling the food. The cubs went wild, chirping and bouncing everywhere. Sarah dumped her gathering on the cave floor. The cubs attacked it immediately, eating with desperate enthusiasm. The grubs disappeared first, then the fruits, then the lizards. The cubs ate until their bellies were round. The mother watched Sarah through all of this. When the cubs were satisfied and playing again, the mother approached the remaining food. She sniffed it carefully. Then, with delicate movements that seemed impossible for such a large creature, she ate. Slowly. Watching Sarah the entire time. When she finished, the mother did something that made Sarah's heart skip. She walked over to a pile of stones in the corner of the cave and picked something up in her mouth. She carried it to Sarah and dropped it at her feet. It was a stone, but not an ordinary one. It was perfectly round and polished smooth, and it glowed faintly in the cave's dim light. Beautiful and clearly valuable. The mother had given Sarah a gift. Sarah knelt down and picked up the stone. It was warm in her hand. She looked up at the mother razorback, and the creature's eyes held something that looked remarkably like approval. From that moment, something changed between them. They were no longer stranger and predator. They were something else, something new. Over the next 2 days, Sarah fell into a routine. She would go out in the morning to gather food. The mother always watched her leave and greeted her when she returned. Sarah brought back everything she could find that was edible. The cubs grew stronger and more playful. Their energy seemed endless. The mother's wound healed quickly with Sarah's care. By the 3rd day, the infection was gone and new tissue was growing. The creature moved more easily now, with less pain, but it was not just about food and medical care. Sarah began to understand the razorbacks on a deeper level. She watched how the mother taught her cubs, how she would demonstrate hunting moves, even in the cave, showing them how to pounce and strike. The cubs would practice on each other, rolling and playing, but learning important skills. Sarah saw how the mother disciplined them too. When one cub got too rough with a smaller sibling, the mother would make a sharp clicking sound. The aggressive cub would immediately stop and lower its head in apology. It was sophisticated social behavior. The cubs showed distinct personalities. The smallest one, which Sarah mentally named Pip, was the bravest. Pip always approached new things first. The largest cub was the gentlest, always letting others eat before him. One had a crooked tail and loved to climb on Sarah's shoulders. Another had a white patch on its chest and never strayed far from its mother. Sarah documented everything in her suit's voice recorder, which had finally started working again. She recorded the sounds they made, the behaviors she observed. This was groundbreaking research, and she knew it. On the third night, as Sarah sat against the warm cave wall with cubs piled on her lap like always, the mother brought her another gift. This time it was a cluster of crystals, sharp and glittering. The mother placed them carefully next to Sarah and then, for the first time, rested her enormous head on Sarah's leg. The weight was considerable, but Sarah did not move. She slowly, carefully, reached out and touched the mother's head. The creature's eyes closed. The purring started. And Sarah sat there, petting an alien predator that had completely trusted her with her most precious possessions, her children. Sarah thought about Earth, about her family there, about the mission she had signed up for. She had expected to find interesting plants, maybe some primitive animals. She had not expected to find this. Intelligence, emotion, family bonds that crossed the species barrier. The cubs slept peacefully on her. The mother purred under her hand, and Sarah realized something important. Humans had been searching for intelligent alien life for centuries. They had found microbes and plants and even some clever animals, but they had never found this. They had never found creatures that could look at something completely alien to them and choose trust over fear. Maybe that said something about both species. Maybe humans and razorbacks had more in common than anyone realized. Sarah's communicator suddenly crackled to life. A voice came through, broken and static-filled, but definitely human. "This is Anderzhou. Rescue location. Respond." Her rescue team had found her signal. They were coming. Sarah looked down at the sleeping cubs, at the mother who trusted her, and she knew the next part was going to be complicated. Very complicated. She pressed the communicator button. "This is Chen. I read you, Commander. But before you come in, there is something very important you need to know." Sarah stood at the cave entrance, trying to stay calm. Behind her, the mother razorback growled softly. She sensed something was wrong. The cubs huddled around Sarah's legs, chirping nervously. In front of the cave, 20 meters away, stood Commander Zhao and 5 other team members. All of them had their weapons raised and pointed at the cave, at Sarah, at the razorbacks. "Chen, step away from the creatures immediately," Commander Zhao ordered through the external speakers on his helmet. His voice was hard and professional. "We have a clear shot. Move aside now." "No," Sarah said firmly. She spread her arms wide, blocking the entrance. "You cannot shoot them, Commander. Stand down." "Those are razorbacks, Chen. Level 5 predators. Our scans showed they are extremely dangerous. You have been compromised. We need to extract you now." "I have not been compromised. I have been learning. Commander, these creatures are not what we thought they were." Behind her, the mother razorback moved. Sarah heard the click of her claws on stone. The cubs pressed closer to Sarah's legs. The mother came forward until she was standing right behind Sarah, her massive body looming over the human. The rescue team tensed. Fingers moved to triggers. "Chen, that thing is going to kill you!" Zhao shouted. "Get out of the way!" The mother razorback made a decision that saved everything. Instead of attacking, instead of roaring or charging, she did something remarkable. She stepped around Sarah and positioned herself between Sarah and the weapons. Then she lowered her body protectively over her cubs, who were still clustered around Sarah's feet. She was shielding both her children and the human. Sarah saw the moment when Zhao understood what he was seeing. His weapon lowered slightly. Confusion crossed his face. "She is protecting me, Commander," Sarah said, her voice shaking with emotion. "She is protecting me and her cubs at the same time. That is not the behavior of a mindless predator. That is intelligence. That is choice." One of the other team members, a young woman named Martinez, lowered her weapon completely. "Sir, look at the cubs. They are treating Chen like family." It was true. The cubs had not run from the humans. They had run to Sarah. Pip, the smallest one, was climbing up Sarah's leg, chirping distressedly. The one with the crooked tail was pressed against Sarah's ankle. Zhao did not lower his weapon, but he did not fire either. "Explain yourself, Chen. You have been missing for 3 days. Your equipment was dead. What happened?" Sarah took a deep breath and told them everything. The storm. Finding the cave. The cubs piling onto her. The mother's return. The wounded side. The food gathering. The gifts. The bond that had formed. "I know it sounds impossible," Sarah said, "but I have documentation. Voice recordings. Observations. Commander, these Razorbacks have sophisticated social structures. They show empathy. They can assess threats and choose nonviolence even when they have the power to kill. They gave me gifts as part of bonding behavior. This is not animal behavior. This is intelligence." Zhao was quiet for a long moment. Behind him, the rest of the team was watching the Razorbacks with new eyes. The mother had not moved. She stayed in her protective position, watching the humans carefully. "Even if what you say is true," Zhao finally said, "we cannot just leave you here. I am not asking you to leave me here. I am asking you to not shoot them. I am asking you to understand what we have discovered." Sarah's voice grew stronger. "Humanity has been searching for intelligent alien life for 200 years. We have sent thousands of probes and ships. We have explored hundreds of systems. And here, on a planet we have been on for 3 weeks, we finally found it. We found beings that can bridge the species gap. Beings that can look at something completely alien and choose trust." "Or maybe you just got lucky," Zhao said, but his voice was less certain now. "Maybe," Sarah admitted. "Or maybe it says something about both species. Razorbacks could have evolved pure aggression, but they did not. They evolved family bonds and empathy and the ability to judge individuals instead of reacting with pure instinct. Does that not sound familiar, Commander?" Martinez spoke up. "Sir, she has a point. If Chen's documentation supports this, we could be looking at the most important discovery in human history." The mother Razorback suddenly made a sound. It was not a growl or a purr. It was something else, something almost like speech. A series of clicks and warbles that had clear structure. The cubs responded with their own sounds. They were talking to each other. "Communication," breathed Martinez. "They have language." Zhao finally lowered his weapon. The others followed his lead. "All right, Chen, we will not shoot, but we are not leaving you alone with them either. We need to secure the area and set up proper observation protocols." Relief flooded through Sarah. "Thank you, Commander." "Do not thank me yet. You violated about 50 different protocols. We are going to have a very long conversation about that." But there was no real anger in his voice. There was something else. Wonder, maybe. Or respect. The mother Razorback sensed the change in threat level. She relaxed slightly, though she kept herself between her cubs and the strange humans. One of her eyes stayed fixed on Sarah, as if making sure the human she had bonded with was truly safe. Over the next hour, the team slowly approached. Sarah introduced them one by one, speaking in a calm voice and moving very slowly. The mother watched everything but allowed it. The cubs, curious and less fearful than their parent, eventually started to approach the new humans. Pip was the first, naturally. The small cub waddled right up to Martinez and sniffed her boot. Martinez froze. Pip chirped, deciding the boot was interesting, and climbed on it. Martinez looked at Sarah with wide eyes. "Just stay calm," Sarah said, smiling. "Let Pip explore. The mother is watching, but she is not aggressive. She is evaluating." Pip climbed up Martinez's leg and settled in her arms. The cub's purring started immediately. Martinez, a trained soldier who had faced combat situations across 3 star systems, looked like she might cry. "It is so soft," she whispered, "and warm, and it trusts me." "Because I trust you," Sarah said, The mother sees that. She understands social bonds better than we gave her credit for. By the time the sun set, 3 of the cubs were being held by different team members. The mother allowed it, though she never moved far from her children. The team had set up basic equipment and called for more supplies and personnel. Zhao stood next to Sarah, watching the scene. "You know what this means, do not you?" he asked quietly. "It means we cannot colonize this planet the way we planned," Sarah said. "It means more than that. It means we have to rethink our entire approach to alien contact. If we missed this about Razorbacks, what else have we missed?" Sarah looked at the mother Razorback, who was watching her with those intelligent eyes. "Everything, Commander. I think we have missed everything." 6 weeks had passed since that first night in the cave. Sarah sat in the new research station, looking out the wide observation window. Outside, the cubs played in the clearing with 3 of the research team members. They were bigger now, fed properly and healthy. Their silver fur shone in the double sunset. The mother Razorback lay nearby, watching everything with her usual alertness. Her wound had healed completely. She could hunt again. But she still came to the research station every day, bringing her cubs to interact with the humans. And she was not alone anymore. 15 other Razorbacks had been observed around the station. Some came close. Some stayed in the forest. But they were all watching and learning from the mother's example. Sarah's tablet chimed. Another report was ready for submission to the Colonial Council. She had written dozens of them now. Each one added more evidence to her initial claims. The Razorbacks were not just intelligent. They were sophisticated in ways humanity was only beginning to understand. They used tools. Sarah had watched a Razorback use a rock to crack open hard-shelled nuts. They planned ahead. A hunting party, she observed, had used coordinated tactics that required communication and strategy. They taught their young through demonstration and correction, not just instinct. Most importantly, they had language. Real language with grammar and syntax. The linguistics team had been recording Razorback vocalizations for 4 weeks now. They had identified over 300 distinct sounds and were starting to understand the patterns. The door opened behind Sarah. Commander Zhao entered with a cup of coffee. He handed one to Sarah and sat down next to her. "The Colonial Council made their decision," he said. Sarah's heart raced. This was the moment that would determine everything. "And? Viridian 7 is now a protected world. No colonization, no resource extraction, no settlement beyond scientific research stations." Zhao smiled. "You won. The Razorbacks keep their planet." Relief washed over Sarah so strongly that she had to set down her coffee before she spilled it. "They agreed? Just like that?" "Not just like that. Your documentation was excellent. The video evidence was undeniable. But what really convinced them was the communication breakthrough 2 days ago." Sarah nodded. That had been incredible. The linguistics team had managed to create a basic translation program. It was rough and imperfect, but it worked. Yesterday, they had said hello to a Razorback in her own language. The creature had responded. They had exchanged greetings. First contact, real contact, had been made. "There is more," Zhao said. "The Council wants to establish a formal diplomatic station here. They want you to run it." Sarah stared at him. "Diplomatic station? For what purpose?" "To learn from each other, to establish protocols, to see if deeper cooperation is possible." Zhao looked out the window at the playing cubs. "Sarah, what you discovered here is bigger than one planet. If Razorbacks can bond with humans, if we can learn to communicate, if we can build trust across species lines, then maybe we can do it with others too. You have shown that it is possible." Outside, Pip noticed Sarah through the window. The cub, no longer quite so small, bounded toward the station. The mother watched but did not stop her. Pip had special privileges now. She was the first, the bridge. The door cycled open, and Pip trotted inside like she owned the place. She went straight to Sarah and climbed into her lap without hesitation. The weight was more substantial now. Pip was growing fast, but she still purred exactly the same way. Martinez walked in behind Pip, laughing. "Sorry, she got away from me. She saw you through the window and just took off." "It is fine," Sarah said, scratching behind Pip's crystalline ear ridges. The cub leaned into the touch, purring louder. "They really do love you," Martinez said. "All of them, but especially this one." It was true. Pip had bonded with Sarah more than any of the others. Where Sarah went, Pip tried to follow. When Sarah worked late, Pip would sometimes sleep outside the station, waiting. The mother allowed it because she trusted Sarah completely. That trust had created something remarkable. Other Razorbacks had started approaching the research team, cautiously but with genuine curiosity. Cubs from other families had been brought to meet the humans. It was like the mother was vouching for humanity to her entire community. "I still cannot believe this all started because you sat down to rest," Zhao said, shaking his head. Sarah smiled, remembering that moment. She had been so tired, so worried about the storm. She had just wanted a few minutes of peace, and then 6 small cubs had decided she was their bed, and everything changed. "I think about that a lot," Sarah said. "What if I had pushed them away? What if I had been too afraid? What if I had followed protocol and maintained distance? We would have classified Razorbacks as dangerous predators and moved on," Zhao said. "We would never have known what we were missing." "Exactly." Sarah stroked Pip's soft fur. "Sometimes the most important discoveries happen when we are vulnerable, when we are too tired to put up all our walls, when we let something unexpected happen." Martinez sat down on Sarah's other side. "Do you think other species have stories like this? Moments where contact could have gone either way?" "Probably," Sarah said. "And I wonder how many times it went wrong, how many times fear won instead of trust." Through the window, the mother Razorback stood up. She walked toward the station slowly. When she reached the window, she pressed her face against the glass, looking in at Sarah and Pip. Her purring was so loud they could hear it through the walls. Sarah stood up, careful not to disturb Pip too much. She walked to the window and placed her hand against the glass. The mother moved her head to meet Sarah's hand, separated only by the clear barrier. "You know what the xenopsychology team said?" Martinez asked. "They said the mother's behavior shows not just intelligence but wisdom. She made a judgment call that went against every instinct. She chose to trust a completely alien being with her children. That is not just smart. That is enlightened." "Maybe," Sarah said. "Or maybe she was just a mother who was hurt and desperate and willing to try anything to keep her cubs safe. And she found someone who helped instead of hurting." "That is humanity in a nutshell, though, is not it?" Zhao said. "When we are at our best, we help. Even when it is inconvenient. Even when it is risky. Even when we are tired and scared ourselves." Sarah thought about that. About all the times in human history when people had chosen to help instead of hurt. When they had reached out instead of pulling back. When they had seen something different and decided to learn rather than destroy. That was what made humans special in the galaxy. Not their technology, not their ships or weapons or colonies. It was their capacity to sit down in a cave, exhausted and vulnerable, and let alien cubs pile onto them. It was the willingness to see intelligence and worth in the unexpected. It was the choice to be someone's bed when they needed one. Pip stretched in Sarah's arms and yawned, showing her tiny teeth. Outside, the other cubs were getting tired too. The suns were setting, casting long shadows across the clearing. Soon it would be night, and the Razorbacks would return to their dens in the forest. But they would come back tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day after, building bridges between species one interaction at a time. Sarah's communicator chimed. A message from Earth. Her family, wanting to know when she would come home. She looked at Pip, at the mother through the window, at the research station that was becoming something more than just a research station. It was becoming a home, a place where two species learn to understand each other. "Tell them I will be a while," Sarah said to Martinez. "I have work to do here." "How long?" Martinez asked. Sarah smiled. "As long as it takes." Pip purred in her arms. Through the window, the mother razorback settled down for the night, secure in the knowledge that her cubs were safe, that the strange humans were friends, and that her choice to trust had been the right one. Sarah had sat down to rest for one moment. The cubs had piled onto her like she was their bed. And in that simple act, everything had changed. Two species had found each other, and the galaxy would never be quite the same again. That was the thing about discovery. Sometimes it happened in laboratories and universities. Sometimes it happened in careful experiments and controlled conditions. And sometimes it happened because someone was too tired to be afraid, and something small and trusting decided they were worth believing in. That was when the real magic occurred. That was when the universe opened up and showed you what was possible. But she would find out very soon.